Hi guys, my name is Jeremy. You may have seen some of my content. I basically teach about personal finance and investing, and you are very, very lucky because you have a teacher who is teaching you about money. And it's a crazy thing that in uh, many schools around the country and the world, we learn about great subjects, math and science and English and all this important stuff. So one day we can get a job, and when you get a job, they pay you money, but we often don't learn about money itself, like how do we manage it, how do we grow it, things like that. And so you guys are really lucky that you have a teacher who's going out of his way to teach you about money, because it's an important part of how we live in this world. And so that's what I do. As I basically, as an adult, my job now is I basically educate people on personal finance, which is just a fancy way to say how to like manage your own money. Yeah, that's what I do with my life now.
Okay, well, thank you so much. So I know you guys have lots of questions, so raise your hand if you have one that you would like to share kind of right off the bat. So Shar, let's start with you.
How exactly does the stock market work and what really is it?
Oh my gosh, that's what an insanely good question. Um, so we live in a world where there are a bunch of businesses, right? So if you go to the store, you can go to Target or Home Depot or Walmart or whatever, and those stores sell you stuff. And basically, um, in order to live in a modern society like we do, we need businesses to help us operate, sell us food and houses and transportation and all the stuff we use. And it turns out that these businesses can get really big. Sometimes there's very small businesses, like maybe like a local restaurant that only has one location, but some businesses are really big. And when businesses get really big, they become what's called publicly traded, which means instead of one person owning the entire company, they sell the company in lots of little pieces called shares, and it's called stock. And so, for example, you can buy a piece of Walmart's, like Walmart's a store that's almost everywhere in the country. You can buy a share of Walmart, and then you are the owner of Walmart. And that's called you owning stock in Walmart. Then you can buy and sell this stock with the other people. It's kind of like just like you might trade baseball cards or a stamp collection. You can buy and sell stock, and that's what the stock market is. And so you can go to the stock market, which happens now on the internet, and you can say, I want to buy a share of Apple stock because I like iPhones like this one, and I want to sell a share of Walmart stock. And that's essentially what the stock market is. And it's a great way to build wealth over time, because when you own a piece of these companies and you collect more and more shares, it's kind of like having like a baseball card collection. You get more and more and more, those shares in the stock market go up in value. So it's a little bit abstract. Like, back in the day, long before even I was born, it wasn't on the internet. You got like a little piece of paper that said, I own one share of Walmart. And you could take that piece of paper and trade it with someone else and buy and sell with cash. But now it all happens on the internet. So yeah, that's what the stock market is. It's basically just a way to buy and sell little tiny pieces of these big companies that we all do business with.
Awesome. Let's go with Talia. Go ahead.
Where did you learn to invest your money?
Where did I learn to invest? I was very lucky because I had a dad who taught me to invest. I wasn't that much older than you guys. You're in fifth grade. I was like in maybe 10th grade or something like that, which probably sounds a lot older than you, but it's only 5 years from now. And I got my first job. And then my dad I was very lucky to have a dad who taught me this. Not Alexa, stop. Sorry, Alexa is talking to me. So yeah, I had a dad. He basically sat me down when I was a teenager and said, hey, now that you're making money, an important part of building wealth is to not only make money and spend money. What most people in this country do is they make money and then they spend all their money. And so they make $100, they spend $100. They make $1,000, they spend $1,000. And if you do that your whole life, you end up broke. You end up with no money. And so my dad said, hey, part of building wealth and being successful in life is when you make money, you spend some of it, and then you save and invest some of it. And so he sat me down and opened up a website with me, which is called Fidelity, which is basically a website where you can invest. And he said, okay, you spend some of your money, and then you transfer some of your money into this investment account. Then you buy stocks in the stock market, like I just described. And if you do that over time, instead of, you guys are in fifth grade, a little bit young to be investing yourself, but it's important to understand this stuff. And so when you get to the point where you're making money, Some people spend all their money, some people spend some and then save and invest some. And if you do that, you can become very rich over your career.
Let's see here, Patrick, go.
Why has the cost of colleges gone up so much?
Oh man, that's a good question. First, the cost of everything goes up over time, and that's called inflation, which basically means, if you go back 100 years before any of us were alive, you could buy a car for like $1,000 or even less, maybe $500, and now a car costs like $20,000. And you're really buying essentially the same car, but stuff just costs more over time. And so part of the increase in the cost in college is just general inflation. Why does it cost more? I don't know. You get into these macroeconomic things like the government keeps printing more money and it's kind of a good thing because you want people to spend their money and not, because when you spend money, companies have more money to grow and things like that. So part of it's inflation. In my opinion, this might be above my pay grade, which means I don't know. But in my opinion, part of it is that um, there are 17-year-olds, not much older than you, who basically can get a blank check, a loan, a big amount of money to go spend on college. And so all these colleges are basically competing for this loan money. And then we're basically forcing young kids, not much older than you, to go spend $100,000, tons and tons of money on college, and then pay it back over the course of their career. And so it's become this kind of arms race. These different colleges are competing to become more and more expensive because the buyers, the consumers, are these 17 and 18-year-olds who are coming out of college or coming out of high school who don't really even know how the world works yet, and they're just spending all this money that they don't even have on debt. So it's, you guys have that to look forward to. But the good news is now that you're learning this stuff, you can make decisions. You can go to a less expensive college, you can get scholarships, you can do a community college. There's lots of ways to get really good educations without just automatically spending as much money as you can get a loan for.
Jaden, go ahead.
How do you make a company?
How do you make a company? That's a really good question. I started my first company when I was graduating from college. So I was young compared to most people, but older than you. And I had that exact same question. I think I went to Google and I typed in, how do you make a company? Same exact question you just asked, because I had no idea. And part of it is filling out forms. You like fill out a piece of paper that says, I'm starting a company. This is what it's called. You maybe have to send a little bit of money to your state government, like the state of Washington. You have to inform them that you're starting a company. That's kind of the easy part. It's just filling out a form. The hard part is basically everything else. You have to think of a name and think of a product or a service, find customers, have a brand, have customer service, and it's a whole world of entrepreneurship, which I think we should be learning a lot more about in schools, because in schools we kind of learn how to become an employee, but not how to start a business. And I think they're both really important parts of the economy. It's a very, you could have an entire year of classes on how to start a company. And so it's hard to give a really short answer, but basically fill a form and then you go get customers and open up a bank account and sell a product or a service, and then you figure it out as you go.
Other questions? Lorian?
How did you become a millionaire?
How did I become a millionaire? Kind of two ways. One is I started a company in college and I worked on it for a long time, for about 12 years. And so you guys are probably, how old are you? 10 years old or so?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically the entire length of your entire life is I was growing this company. And for years and years, I wasn't making very much money. I was a poor person. I was making, even less than your teacher makes right now. I mean, not that's even less, but teachers should be making way more money is my point. And then I eventually started doing better. I started hiring employees. So I would post an ad on the internet and say, hey, would you like to come work for my company? And I'd pay them a salary out of the company bank account. And then it was doing better and better. And then a much bigger company saw what we were doing and said, hey, what you guys did is really cool. It's hard to do. we want to do that, but we don't want to do it from scratch. So we're just going to buy you. And so this big company paid me $5 million to basically give them my company. I sold my company. My share, I didn't get all 5 million. Company ownership gets a little bit complicated. I only owned 70% of it. And then I had to pay taxes. When you get a bunch of money, you have to pay taxes. And so I actually ended up with about $2 million. And so even though I sold my company for 5 million, I got about 2 million in my bank account. And that's how I initially became a millionaire. And then since then, I have basically invested my money instead of taking that 2 million. Sometimes you hear about lottery winners who like win $2 million and then they go and spend it all. But I didn't spend it. Instead, I invested it. I went to the stock market, like that first question asker asked about, and I bought a bunch of stock with it. Essentially, I bought what's called an index fund, which is all the stocks, and then I just own it. And so now, even though I'm not really, working on it, I am an owner of all these different companies in the stock market, and my $2 million initial benefit from that sale of the company is now worth like $5 million just from being an owner. And so that's kind of the great part about being an investor, is that your money is working for you. And so while it's important to work hard, go get a job, start a company, whatever, you also want your money working for you so it can grow. That's how I have become and grown my wealth.
Jeremy, I'm just gonna put a follow-up question out there. So yesterday I saw you posted on Instagram, and you're a very much an open book financially. And I saw that you had posted that you had a big loss on the day because the stock market went down. So you lost a lot of money. What would you say is the worst thing that someone can do in a situation where all of a sudden the stock market is kind of tanking on any given day?
The worst thing you can do is sell. And so part of investing, if you just save money in a savings account, it doesn't go down in value. So if you're just saving cash and putting it under your mattress, or saving money and putting it into a bank, it doesn't go down in value. And so if you get $100 and $200 and $300, it's basically safe. With investing, you are accepting what's called volatility. The price of your investments is going to go up and down a little bit over time. And so, yeah, yesterday was a very bad day in the stock market. I lost like $80,000, but I didn't really lose it because I didn't sell anything. And so the best investing practice is to buy and what's called buy and hold. And so when I'm investing, I'm not guessing, I'm not gambling, I'm not jumping in and out of the market, I'm not speculating. I'm simply buying more and more and more and more shares and letting them ride over time. And I'm expecting there to be this short-term volatility. And so when I posted that I lost that money yesterday, I was kind of joking about it mostly because I'm not worried about it. I'm not doing anything. I'm not selling. If anything, it's a good opportunity to buy more, because you can, when the price goes down, you can acquire more shares for cheaper. And so that's basically how rich people get rich, not by guessing or gambling or jumping in and out of the market, by just buying. It's kind of this like compound growth, exponential growth. You guys are probably learning about some of that stuff in math, where it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger over time. And so even though there's that bumpiness along the way, it doesn't matter because I'm just buying more shares.
Another question? Tyler.
Is it better to rent or buy a house?
Where'd you guys get all these questions, these fifth graders? Mr. Bishop, did you feed them these questions?
Oh, they came up with it on their own. I gave them a couple example questions, but then they took the ball and rolled with it.
Okay, amazing. This is a great class. The answer depends. I hate those answers because it depends. I think a lot of times you'll hear people say, when you're an adult, the best thing to do is always to buy a home. And in my opinion, that's not true, because a lot of times buying a home is more expensive, it's less flexible. And so it depends. And buying a home also requires a huge down payment. You have to pay like a lot of money. So what happens to a lot of people is they become what's called house poor, where they buy a house, but then they put all their money into their house, and then they don't have any money to like spend on things they like or to invest in the stock market. And so I'm currently 44 years old, which is very old compared to you, but I was a renter until I was 38 years old. And so I didn't buy a home until I was almost 40 years old. And that worked really well for me because I was able to invest all that money. If I had, when I sold my company and I made that $2 million, if I had bought a $2 million home, today it would be worth, a little bit more than 2 million, but I would have had to pay just to maintain that house, which is very expensive. So my net worth would probably still be around $2 million. But now it's like $5 million because I was investing. And so the answer is it depends. The real important part is to what I call live below your means. If you buy a really, really fancy apartment and rental or a really, really fancy house to buy, that's going to be very expensive. But if you buy a modest house or rent a modest apartment and you have leftover money, it's going to be much better. And so it depends, but the most important part is basically buying a home that's not going to make you house poor and so you can live below your means.
Okay, can we pause for just a quick second? Can you guys all stand up and run in place for 25 seconds? Sorry. Run in place, everybody. Double like that. Okay, 10 more seconds, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. I didn't realize that Jeremy was doing this too. He was running so fast that he froze. There he's unstuck. Oh, now he's blurring this. Oh, there he is. Okay. Question, please, for Jeremy. Valerie, go ahead.
The best company to invest in.
Did you hear that, Jeremy?
No, I couldn't hear that one.
You said, let's say it again a little louder.
What do you think is the best company to invest in?
Best company.
What do I think is the best company to invest in? That's another really good question. I'm very certain of the answer, and the answer is I don't know. And when you invest in the stock market, you guys can, probably even look up stock prices and see what different companies are out there. You can buy any company. You could buy Apple or Amazon or Google, any of the companies that like any of the stores you go to, basically, you can buy their stock. But it's really, really hard to know ahead of time which stock is the best to buy, to answer your question. The reason is because everyone out there in the world, like your whole class, me, all the smart people in New York and Chicago, are all buying and selling these stocks all the time. And so in order to pick which one's the best, you have to basically know more than everybody else who's playing this game, which in my opinion is basically impossible. And so the best stock to buy is really all of them. When I invest, I don't guess on one stock or the other. It's okay to do that a little bit, but my primary strategy is to buy all the stocks in what's called an index fund. It's basically a simple package to buy every single stock in proportion to the size. So you buy the most of the biggest stock, the second most of the second biggest stock. And that basically guarantees you the growth of all those companies instead of trying to pick and choose and guess which one. And there's a great quote by Jack Bogle, who is the founder of Vanguard, which is an investment company. And he said, instead of looking for the needle in the haystack, instead of guessing, like trying to find what's the best company in this haystack, he says, just buy the haystack. And what he means is there are good companies out there. They're going to be the best companies going forward, but it's really, really hard to know what they are because it's like a needle in the haystack. So just buy the entire haystack, and then you're sure to own them.
Jeremy, I'm the math teacher. And so just to kind of follow up with that question, I always buy my boys, I have 2 sons, a stock for Christmas to a company. So here's the specific question. If you were to buy a stock to a single company right now, and it doesn't have to be an expensive one, and it doesn't have to be a long shot, like what do you think would be a good stock to buy as a Christmas present?
I wouldn't. I would buy an ETF, which is like a basket of all those stocks. I mean, I literally can't answer. I really believe I have absolutely no, like, I strongly believe in my heart, I have no insight. I think it's cool, by the way. I think buying an individual stock is cool. I think it gives you like a taste of ownership, and you feel connected to that company, and you have a more direct ownership of that company. I couldn't possibly answer that question. If you're going to twist my arm, I don't know. I'd buy probably some of the biggest companies. Like, let's see. I'm gonna look at the S&P 500 here and see what the biggest companies are today. Let's see. That's not giving it to me. Hold on, I'm almost there. Yeah, so Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google. But you know, buying individual companies is tough because then you have to sell them at some point. Whereas if you buy an ETF or an index fund, all the companies inside are kind of what's called self-cleansing, meaning they're kind of rotating in and out. And so you always own the biggest companies or whatever. But yeah, I know, sorry, it's a really unfulfilling answer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Vex, go ahead.
What is the best credit card in your opinion?
The best credit card? I am not a big credit card guy. A credit card is basically just a way to borrow money and then pay it back later. You know, using one is a reality in the modern world. Basically, that's just how you transact. Now, if you go to the store, you pay with a credit card. But credit cards can be dangerous because you can spend money that you don't yet have. And so, for example, I could go buy a TV for $500, but if I don't have $500, they're going to charge me interest, meaning that not only do I have to pay back the $500, but I have to pay even more. And it can sometimes even double or triple if you pay it back slowly. And so I might buy a TV for 500 and then have to pay back $1,000 because of the interest. And so I just don't get excited about credit cards. I use them as a necessity, but I pay them off in full 100% every single month. I never carry a balance. I never borrow. I never spend money I don't have. And then beyond that, you know, there's like credit card points and stuff, but I really think that's a gimmick. It's like a sales tactic. It's like a game that um, the big credit card banks implement to trick people to spend more money. That's essentially what it is, right? These huge credit card companies are multi-trillion-dollar companies in some cases, and they're not doing it to be nice. They're putting these points in place to basically get you to spend more money. So I'm not a big credit card points kind of guy, but yeah, when you guys are, you know, 18 or whatever, you'll probably get one. And my main piece of advice is pay it off in full every single month. Don't spend money that you don't have.
You guys, raise your hand if you remember what that's called, if you pay it in full every single month. Actually, just say it out in three. 1, 2, 3.
Deadbeat.
Deadbeat. So.
What's
yeah,
it called? Deadbeat?
called a deadbeat. If you're someone who, like you, Jeremy, that pays off your credit card in full every month, you never pay interest, you're considered to the credit card company a deadbeat because they're not getting anything out of you.
Which is good. Although they do actually still make money on the transaction cost too. So they still like you. They get like 2 to 3% of every single swipe. So even though you're not paying interest, which is the way that they really make a lot of money, they're fine. They're gonna make their money either way.
All right, another question. Hannah, go ahead.
What do you prefer to buy with your extra money, like for fun?
That's a great question. I think, you know, as much as it's important to talk about saving and investing and building wealth, the whole point of money isn't to die one day having them acquire the most. The point is to live a full and rich life. And I'd say my general answer is I think I treasure experiences over stuff. So I don't really like stuff. I just moved recently and we had a big moving truck with a bunch of boxes, and the whole time I was just thinking, why do we have all this stuff? It just clutters up the house, clutters up your mind. So I would much rather take a trip to see something new, to have a new experience, or go on an adventure with my family, or, you know, do new things and see new things, because those, you know, last forever inside of you, whereas stuff just accumulates. So I like to do experiences.
Yeah, my mom and our family moved, and she every single week has been constantly getting rid of stuff.
Good. I like her. Minimalist. That's the new way.
Bennett, go ahead.
When did you start investing?
I started when I was, I think, 17 or 18, when I got my first summer job and I had my first paycheck. And my dad helped me open up an investment account and put some of my money in there and buy some mutual funds. Back in the day, I'd probably be buying index funds now. But yeah, basically, once I got my first job, part of making money was spending some and then saving and investing some. And just if you make that a habit as part of your life, you will become fabulously wealthy. And if you spend all your money, you'll stay broke. That's just math.
Yusuf, go ahead.
How long did it take for you to become a millionaire?
I first became a millionaire when I was 34 years old. And so it took me 34 years from birth. It took me about 12 years from the end of college. I graduated college when I was 22. That's very good. You know, most people take longer than that. Well, most people never become a millionaire, and those who do usually become a millionaire more in like their 40s or 50s. But I also got lucky. I think there's a big degree of luck involved in that. And that's kind of life, you know. Life is a combination of hard work and putting yourself in the position to be lucky, and then getting lucky sometimes, and it happens different for different people.
Jeremy, just for sake of time, how much more time do you say, like 20 minutes? Is that too much?
When do you guys have that long?
Yeah, we do. I just want to make sure we get to at least a few more questions, but I want
Yeah,
to.
you want to go to like 45 past the hour, 11:45.
Great. Okay, Lindsay and Beck.
What do you mean to invest?
What was that one?
Mean to invest.
What does it mean to invest?
To invest? That's a really good question too. So I think when people hear the word invest, they often think gamble. You can like buy and sell Bitcoin. You can buy and sell stocks every single day. You can basically guess what's going to happen. But in my opinion, that's not investing. That is gambling or speculating. Investing is buying something and holding it for a long period of time. Like Mr. Bishop does when he buys a gift of a stock for his child. The idea isn't that he's going to sell it the next day and try to flip it for a buck. It's that he's going to hold it for a very long time. And many of these big stocks pay dividends, which means just by the pure fact that you own them, you get paid cash just for being an owner. So for example, I could buy one share of Apple stock, and you guys probably know there's like MacBooks and iPhones and yada, yada, yada. And as Apple does business and makes a profit, they send some of that profit back to their owners, to the individual shareholders. And so that's what investing is. It's like buying these things, generally like stocks and real estate. Real estate is like houses, properties, you know, so you could buy a rental property and then owning it for a long period of time and just acquiring more. And that's, you know, I think sometimes people hear invest and they get nervous because it's like, oh, it's a scary thing. I'm gonna buy and sell and I'm gonna lose money. But if you don't sell, then it's not a scary thing. You're just buying more and more and more. You own more shares, you own more real estate. And so that's what investing is to me. It's like buying something that pays you while you own it, like dividends or rent from a rental property, and then it's likely to go up in value, like stocks or real estate.
Okay, 20 quick jumping jacks. Let's go, 20. Real ones. Yellow, 5, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15. Jeremy, that's not a whole jumping jack. 19, 20. All right, take a seat.
Ouch, I heard.
Okay, a few more questions. Then go ahead.
What is a Roth IRA?
Oh my gosh, what fifth grade? Is this a senior college course? So when you buy a stock, you can't put it into a savings account. So if you go to a bank, some of you guys maybe have savings accounts like with help of your parents. If you go to a bank and just have a regular savings account, you can't put stock in there. That's just not how it works. Savings accounts only hold cash. And so there's a different type of account called an investment account or a brokerage account that holds stocks, bonds, index funds, investments. So savings accounts hold cash, investment accounts hold investments. A Roth IRA is a special type of investment account. It's like another, just a name for a type of account that when you put investments in there and they grow, you don't pay tax on it. And so it's basically the US federal government, you know, our president and our senators and our Congress people wrote this law that says, hey, there's a new type of account called a Roth IRA. IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account. And that basically says when you put stuff in there, when you put investments in there, you don't have to pay tax on any of the growth forever. And so it's an incentive. It encourages individuals like you and me to use it, to take advantage of it, because the government doesn't want a bunch of broke old people. You know, when you guys are very young right now, but when you're like my age or older, the government doesn't want to have poor people lining the streets. The government wants rich people because that's good for the country. And so the government said, hey, here's an option for you guys, all you individual US citizens. It's called a Roth IRA. You can open an account with a regular old, investment website like Vanguard or Fidelity or Schwab. You just go to a website, you click open an account, Roth IRA. You guys will do it in a few years. And then anything you put inside there grows tax-free forever. And so it's just an incentive to invest.
And just a reminder, we've kind of briefly talked about this, but there's also something called a custodial Roth IRA, where your parents can open up an account for you and you guys can make those investment choices together. And then once you turn 18, they can transfer it over to you so that you have ownership of that and it just becomes a Roth IRA at that point. Other questions? Silas.
What's the best way to make money?
What's the best way to make money? The best way to make money is to have a skill or a service that's in high demand in the market. And, making money is maybe a separate conversation from doing good for the world, maybe. You could argue it, but I'd say if your goal is to make money, and I think it should be one of your goals, in addition to doing good for the world, you want to have a skill or service that's in high demand. So for example, I studied computer programming in college, and we live in a world right now that's a very modern world with lots of computers. And so people want to hire computer programmers. If I studied something like art history, not that art history isn't a great endeavor to learn, it's not as high of demand in the marketplace. And so if you want to make money, you're probably more likely to make money as a computer programmer than you are as an art history specialist. That's not to say you couldn't make money that way, but if you're asking me what's the best way to make money, I'd say find a skill or a service that's in high demand. And so you guys have a long time to figure that out, for sure. But as you're entering high school and college and making the decisions, you should really be paying attention to the world around you. It's going to be different in 10 years than it is now, and seeing what skills are in high demand, what jobs are people always looking to hire for. It doesn't need to be computers, for another one could be in the medical industry, nurses are in high demand. A lot of construction jobs, there's a lot of old people who do plumbing and electrical, and not a lot of young people entering those fields. And so as those people retire, young people are going to need to do those jobs, and those, you can make a lot of money being a plumber or an electrician. So, but these are big questions that you guys will answer as you age and think about what are the jobs and skills that are in high demand. Because if they're in high demand, you can charge a high price because people will be willing to pay for it because they want it a lot. So yeah, keep your ears and eyes open and listen to what people need a lot of in this world and do that.
Other questions? Kristen?
What's the one piece of device you wish you knew when you were our age?
I would say, this isn't about money, but I'd say a couple things. One, I wish I always knew to be kind. Fifth grade was a pretty good year, but middle school is a tough time. Like the next 3 years you guys are entering, and people are growing really fast and developing and changing personalities and, making and losing friends. And I was picked on a lot at that time in my life. I was made fun of a lot. And you can't help that. That's said nothing about me. It said something about the jerks who decided to pick on me. But I think sometimes then I wasn't kind in return. And so I think that I would think if I could go back and talk to my fifth grade self, I'd say, hey, always be kind. No matter what anyone says to you, does to you, if you're always kind, that's who you are. Doesn't matter what they do. That's going to happen. There's going to be jerks in middle school that pick on people. That's going to happen probably for the rest of time. But you get to decide how you behave. And that's what wish I was embarrassed about. That I wish I was always nicer to people that were cool, not cool, popular, not popular, whatever it is. I wish I was always kind. What were you gonna say?
So what I meant was financial advice,
What about the financial advice?
right?
I think he's meaning from a financial perspective, like there's something that you wish you had known
Yeah.
at a younger age, like at 10 or 11.
Yeah, when you're 10 or 11, you're kind of in learning phase right now, right? So your, parents or guardians are covering your housing and food. Um, I know it might be a little bit frustrating to be learning about this stuff and not being able to do it yet, because the way that our country laws are, you have to be basically 18 to open up your own financial accounts. Other than, Mr. Bishop said you could have a custodial account, so you could talk to your parents about that sort of thing. But I'd say, like, live below your means, spend less than you make. I think that's the key to wealth. And I think that it sounds simple, but you will see with your own eyes, your friends, your coworkers, your bosses, everyone you've seen in your life will be spending beyond their means. They'll spend all their money. And so if you can live below your means and invest the difference, then you will be very wealthy. And it's not going to be, you right now are in a very special place. You might not know this, but there's not a lot of fifth grade classrooms on planet Earth that are like Mr. Bishop's, where you guys are learning this knowledge this deep. And so a lot of other people that you'll encounter in your life will just spend all their money, and because they didn't learn this very simple lesson of live below your means. And so I know it sounds simple and basic, but that's how rich people get rich. They spend less than they make.
How did you make the investment growth retirement calculator thing?
Look at this deep knowledge. Well, I'm a computer programmer. I took a computer programming class in high school for the first time, and I really liked it. And then that's what I studied in college. And so that's how I kind of, and you guys are probably getting to the age where you can do some programming, and then get pretty serious about it over the next several years. And so I basically just, I learned a lot of it in school, and then the rest I just taught myself. And so I would Google things like, okay, how to draw a chart. I wanted there to be a chart, so I learned how to do that. I Googled how to have a form. A form is where you like type in those little, type in the numbers in there. And then I looked at other examples and I just figured it out. And, a lot of schools like learning to learn. And so I think a big part of being a good programmer is just having the confidence to keep trying. It's sometimes like if you look at that and you're like, how could I possibly do this? It seems so incredibly complicated, and you give up, then you won't do it. But if you're like, okay, let me try the tiniest little piece. Can I get a letter to appear on the screen? Can I make the simplest version of this thing? Can I draw one line, whatever it is? And then you iteratively improve over time. That's how people make complicated stuff. It's just a little bit at a time and figuring it out. And that's how I made mine.
Version?
Isn't it related to financial stuff, but do you have any kids?
I have a 3.5-year-old stepson who's adorable and is listening to TV right now as I'm home watching him. And my wife is pregnant, like 7 months. And so I'll be having my first child of my own in the end of February. So I'm going to be a new dad. I know. Oh, look. Oh, thank you. That's so nice.
Okay, Betsy, have you got one? Go ahead, Betsy.
What is something you think everybody should know about saving money if they didn't already?
Could you repeat that one, Mr. Bishop? What should people, or maybe say a little bit louder?
Say it louder, just project your voice a little more.
What is something you think everybody should know about money if they didn't already?
What should everyone know about money? Good question. I would say, I think people should know that money is something that can grow on its own. I think most people learn that money is something to spend. And you learn a lot of these lessons at your age. You know, if when you guys home, you might hear your parents say, like, "Oh, the neighbors bought a new car; they must be doing well." And when your parents say something like that, what they mean is, the neighbors spent a lot of money. That must mean they have a lot of money. But that's not quite right, actually, because when you spend money, you no longer have that money. And so money, while is partially used to buy things we like cars, it can also be something to grow, right? And so I think that the money mindset that I think everyone should learn that many don't is that it's not just a spending tool, it's a growing tool. When you buy assets like stocks and index funds and you own them for long periods of time, it grows. And so I think that's the main lesson people need to learn about money.
Simone.
What did you wish? What do you wish that someone taught you about when you were our age?
That's really similar to that last question. I'll give the other half of the answer, which is another mistake I made in school was I was under the false impression that trying was not cool. And so when I went through middle school and high school, I tried to just like coast through. I was like, I don't need to study. I don't need to try very hard. The grades will just come easy to me, and it will be like a badge of honor that I got a good grade without trying hard. But that's not true. The lesson I learned in adult life is trying is a good thing. Trying hard is how people are hugely successful. Persistence and hard work and trying very hard and studying hard and learning and advancing and that's the skill that makes you super successful in life. And so I wish someone told me, hey, there's no brownie points for not trying hard, right? Like when you're in high school, you're going to take a big test called the ACT or SAT. I didn't study for that. I was like, no, I'm just going to wing it. And I just did medium on those tests. If I'd studied, I think I would have done great on them. And I'll never be able to go back now because I'm a grown up, right? And so I wish I would have tried harder, because trying hard is cool. Trying hard is how millionaires become millionaires and how athletes become athletes, and how actors and actresses and singers become famous singers. Like they try really, really hard. And so I wish I didn't think that was not cool, because it is cool.
Dante.
How much of your income should you save?
Could you repeat it?
How much of your income should you save?
It varied at times. When I was in my early 20s, right out of college, I didn't even make enough to afford groceries, and so I couldn't save anything. I was actually living on debt for a while, which is not good. And then when I got a job, when I eventually had like a full-time job, I was probably saving 2/3 of my salary, some like massive amount. And so, it kind of depends, like certainly making more money helps. But you also still have to be purposeful. When I sold my company and I made that $2 million, I saved all of it essentially. I didn't spend any of it. I kept living off of my income and saved 100% of it. And that's how that money has grown to this day. I've had a little bit of an atypical career because I had a startup period where I was very poor and an exit when I sold my company where I made a lot of money. I think typically people who have jobs try to save, a good ballpark is like 15% of their income at the minimum. But there's no rules about it. You could save 50% if you can afford it. And then the more you save, the faster you build wealth. And those are the trade-offs you make, right? You could save more and build wealth faster, but then you might be missing out on experiences, But I'd say at a minimum, you want to be shooting for at least 15%. And don't say 0% like a lot of people do, because then you'll never get ahead.
All right, I'm gonna do one more question. Izzy, go ahead. It's loud.
What savings account do you think is best for people like our age, like 10, 11?
So I don't think you can open up your own savings account, but I think you can, like Mr. Bishop said, have a savings, like a joint account or a custodial account with an adult. And I don't really think there's a best savings account. Savings accounts are kind of simple. You just put your money in and then it's saved. It just stays there and gets some interest. There is a thing called a high yield savings account, which I would recommend, which basically pays you a little more interest. It's not a lot, but if you put $100 in there, you'll make like $3 or $4 in interest per year, which is like, free $3. I would take that. So if you're like putting your birthday money in there every year, it's definitely a great start to savings. And then beyond that, I'd say just, maybe one that has like a local branch where you can walk in and you can deposit cash or deposit money. Just something that's convenient and has a high yield savings kind of option.
Hey, Jeremy, I have a quick question. Where did you go to college?
I went to the University of Michigan. In Michigan, I did live in the Seattle area for 2 summers. I was an intern for Microsoft. I live in Bellevue and Redmond. So that's my Washington connection. And yeah, then I moved to San Diego when I was in my late 20s.
All right, well, Jeremy, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us. Your answers are fantastic, and I've always appreciated how kind of open you are and just genuine and just very generous with your distribution of knowledge. So we just all want to say thank you. I will probably put this on my YouTube channel if you're okay with that, and then share that with you.
For sure.
Okay. So I'll send that out to you later, but can we all just give a big round of applause for Jeremy?
Thank you very much. This was like the best 5th grade class I've ever seen in my life. You guys are doing great. You have very bright futures. Thank you for the amazing questions. Thank you for the honor of having me. It was my pleasure.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jeremy. Say bye.
Bye, guys.